Okay, Peter, why don't you go ahead and get started, and I'll pull up the screen as soon as you're done.
Good afternoon. My name is Peter Hurst, and I'm the president and CEO of the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council. I want to thank you for taking the time today to participate in today's How to Do Business in Energy Efficiency with Eversource. Today, we have the team from Eversource, which includes Shante Davidson, who's a Supplier Diversity Program Manager, Ruth Georges, who's a strategist in energy efficiency, Craig Dykeman, who's the Director of Procurement, and he will provide an overview of Eversource's procurement and supplier diversity program. I also want to thank Eversource before we get started for being a gold annual sponsor of the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council. Annual sponsorships are very critical in helping the council provide programming for our MDs, and we could not do our work without them. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. First, we will be recording the session. Second, this presentation will be shared following the conclusion of the event. And third, we have a large number of attendees, and there will be time at the end of this presentation for Q&A. So please use the Q&A, not the chat, for questions so that none are missed. And now, I'd like to turn it over to Shante, Ruth, and Craig.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Peter. Certainly want to say thank you to Jenny for all of your leadership and all of the support that you continue to provide for us. Like Peter said, my name is Shante Davidson. It's so nice to be with you all this afternoon. I am the Supplier Diversity Program Manager here at Eversource. My role is probably one of the best that we have at the organization. I get to connect diverse suppliers to business opportunities, and it's nothing that I take lightly. So we are here for you today. We implore you and encourage you to take in all this information, jot down some notes. It's very rare that we have a bunch of panelists from different parts of the organization at Eversource in the same forum. So please take advantage of all of our institutional knowledge, as well as an opportunity to build some new relationships today. As many of you probably know, Eversource is across 3 service territories. So we service Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Hampshire in the categories of electricity, gas, and water. So today we're going to learn about the essentials of doing business within our energy efficiency department within Eversource. And then we will learn about some current and future opportunities. And finally, we will leave time for questions. And again, I cannot say enough. Please, please, please ask us questions at the end. Next slide, please. All righty, so this is our distinguished panelist of guests. So you've already met me, and I hope to connect with more of you in the future. Ruth is within our energy efficiency department. Again, she is an energy efficiency strategist. She looks at the intersection of equity across all of our energy efficiency programs. So she's charged with a lot, including workforce development and making sure that we can remove barriers that may participate in some of our program designs so that all of our customers are enabled to participate in our programs. Then we have the great Craig Dykeman, who I happen to roll up under within procurement. He's a fearless leader within the procurement department, and he'll be welcoming you today and letting you know how important supplier diversity is to us and anything else he wants to share. Our panelists are available for questions at the end. We have Noel Chambers. He's been here for well over 6 years. He's worked on a variety of programs, including our turnkey programs and our small business programs, and continues to work within our workforce development efforts. We have Krista Simmons. She's got some great tenure here as well. She is a procurement agent. She works in facilities and lodging and catering, and the list goes on. And she's certainly an expert when it comes to answering any of your procurement process related questions. Then we have Alex Sopolak. She's done it all as well. She's managed large C&I, small C&I, and everything else in between. She's got a lot of knowledge about our small business programs as well. And she's really specific. She's a resource dedicated to Connecticut. So any Connecticut related questions, she is your go-to woman. And then finally rounding it out with my personal cheerleader, June Wooding. She is our procurement agent that specializes in energy efficiency, and she really, she's the queen of the energy efficiency category. So she's able to answer any RFP questions, and she'll be featured when we do our frequently asked questions. So as we go through the presentation and we talk about how to register and what the RFP process is, please keep some of these thoughts in mind so that we can direct questions to them and enable you to have all of your questions answered. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Craig.
All right, and thank you, Shantae. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to correct Shantae right out of the gate. So first and foremost, welcome and appreciate everybody's time in this very exciting webinar that we're going to be doing this afternoon. I'm going to correct Shantae because candidly, I have the best job in the world managing a team of 54 people in procurement that oversee about $2.5 to $3 billion a year in external spend. So again, I'm Craig Dykman, Director of Procurement. One of the things that I think is really awesome here at Eversource is, diversity, inclusion, and equity are core values that we live and breathe every day. Our progress as a company is tracked and reported on many of our corporate scorecards. And really, we do that to ensure that, basically we're doing everything possible to meet and exceed the expectations of our employees, of our stakeholders, shareholders, but most importantly, that we're doing the right thing in the communities that we all live and work in. So, as part of that, the procurement organization every year sets very aggressive supplier diversity spend targets so that really we're making sure that we treat our supply base, fairly equally, but more importantly, we're giving opportunities to groups of people that in some cases may have slight disadvantages. We're a huge company. We can be very challenging at times to do business with just because of requirements that we have. But what we want to do, and certainly Shantae is, really such an advocate and such a passionate driver of this, is make sure that we're giving everybody the opportunity at some point in time to have fair and equal opportunity to do business with us. So with that, I ask everybody in this call today, please be interactive, ask questions. I'm going to be followed by a very passionate team and a very capable team of individuals. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ruth, and she can take you through our goal for the day and go from there. But again, thank you on behalf of Eversource, and really look forward to your participation.
Thank you, Craig. I can't say thank you enough to everyone who's in attendance today. We are going to go through some of our goals, and we really want this to be an interactive section when we're asking questions. There's a lot of content that we're going to share. This is a part of a broader series that Shantae and I are going to be leading on, really increasing access to our industry, working with all the colleagues that we have here to reach more businesses and to remove some of those barriers to participation. And we know some of that exists in just simply understanding what the process is. So some of our goals today is to share knowledge with you all as diverse suppliers around the procurement process, and to increase the amount of diverse supplier proposals. That is a priority for us, and we understand a part of that is sharing more information on the proper process of doing that, and also to enable suppliers to submit strong bid proposals. And so we want to do our best in removing those barriers to participation, and the way we can do that is by making sure that we are not only sharing information but giving you an opportunity to engage. As a part of this, at the end of the presentation later, probably this afternoon, we will be sending out a post survey to give you an opportunity to share some feedback on what you learned about from this presentation, and just some really important information that we need to be able to do this more extensively. So today's agenda, we are going to cover, what it means to register as a prospective supplier, what those first steps in finding our vendors, the supplier opportunities that exist around upcoming RFPs, The bid process, we know sometimes that can be that can be taxing for a small business to kind of understand. So we're going to go through that extensively. I would say, since there's not an opportunity to ask questions while we are going through each of these items, and we're going to open it up at the very end. If you want to kind of just take notes of what your questions are, I would encourage that, as it is going to be quite a bit of content. We'll then go through the business kickoff and what that means, how to prepare for that, and what it means to become business ready. So, Shantae and I are going to spend some time getting into the weeds of this, but we're also going to speak at a higher level. So there's an opportunity, of course, to ask questions at the end, and to stay connected with us as we continue to roll out more opportunities to engage around becoming a supplier with Eversource. Now I'm going to pass this back on to Shantae.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Ruth. Appreciate that. So most of you, all of you rather, should have received a flyer. I would encourage you to get that flyer loaded up on your cell phone or on your laptop, so that as we continue to go through the steps of how to complete the RFP process, you can follow along. It will be content heavy, and so we would look to give you this resource just so that you can have an understanding, as well as have a resource document to a reference document to resource. A resource document to reference when you're going to go ahead and go through RFPs. But first of all, let's talk about getting you into the game. The first thing you need to do is to register as a supplier. We use an online portal. It's called Arba. We will be sending you the link for Arba afterwards, along with a PowerPoint presentation that provides the step-by-step steps you need to take to go ahead and enroll. And so what you're going to want to do is you're going to create your profile. You'll need a user ID and a password, and then you're going to create, you're going to tell us a little bit about yourself, what type of business you are, how sustainable you are, and what segments you participate in. I really liken it to creating a user ID and password for anything like something as simple as your checking account, except you will need to make sure that the profile is robust and that it tells us a lot about you and your business. And so this is really the gateway to get Eversource to know you, is by registering for a supplier profile. So please make sure you do that before you are even interested. That way, as opportunities arise, we can search our system for you, because that's exactly what happens. If we have a bid that's going to go out, it's my responsibility, along with the procurement team like June and Krista, to search our internal Arba database to see if there is a matching supplier that would be interested in the bid. And the only way we know that is if you create a robust profile and let us know what segments you are interested in. So the first step is making sure you get registered. Next slide, please. All righty. And so you're registered, and now what? We're going to briefly review some upcoming opportunities we have throughout the rest of the year. We are going to review this at a very high level, but again, as we do review these, just keep in mind the type of business that you have and the type of RFP that will be released, and think about whether or not it's something that you would be interested in and something that your business would perform really well at. And next slide, please. Alrighty, so we will be sending this out, but what you're seeing is a sample of just 20 of the RFPs that will be going out in energy efficiency. We did list these at a high level, but as you can see, we listed them by program name, whether they're commercial or residential, which always ties back to a meter. So for example, the meter in your house that clicks and sends you a bill every month is residential, and the one that's in your institution wherever you work is likely commercial. And so that's how we do things within energy efficiency. You're usually going to be on the commercial and industrial, or on the residential side of the house. And then finally, we have our program categories to the far right. You'll notice that there are 7 categories that kind of jump out. We have electrical contractor, evaluation services, home performance, implementation vendor, the list goes on, as well as small business contracting. And so this is really where our panelists can shine. So just take a quick look at this and we can answer any questions you may have about some of those RFPs during our panelist section. And so now I'm going to kick it over to Ruth, who's going to go very in depth about what our RFP process looks like. And June is going to follow it up with some frequently asked questions, and then we will open the gates for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Next slide, please. All right, thank you for that, Shantae. So you've looked at the list, you may have created an account with Ariba, and you said to yourself, I'm interested and I want to apply. So we want to share some context of, how we get to the RFP process. So the request for proposal, known as an RFP, they are identified by the program team. An example of the program team would be myself, Noah, and other members that are on here. We've identified we need some work that's done. It's outside of the core competency of the work that we do. We often, release RFPs for part of the work that requires large implementation. So you look at that list and you say, you know what, I have transferable skills that could do this work. I'm interested. And so as Shantae mentioned, there's over 100 opportunities for energy efficiency that are available in just 2021 alone, that are identified based on the program offerings and contract expiring. So once those contracts expire, we do repost again. And so the business partner, which is us as energy efficiency, we identify suppliers that may be a good fit through the RFP. So through the RFP, we will, have an extensive scope of work, explaining what all the work that is that we're looking to do. The vendors that are chosen are known to often work in the workspace that we're in, but procurement does search in Ariba for possible vendors to create and complete a robust profile. So I know Shantae spoke to that earlier, registering for Ariba, making sure you have a profile. So those opportunities become available, you can apply for them. We work with the Supplier Diversity Program Manager, which is Shantae, to look for certified diverse suppliers in the subject area. The business partners as business partners, we work with procurement. The statement of work is always written by the are provided by the business procurement. Of work.
Okay, Ruth, I'm going to just do my best to step in because it appears that you may have been frozen. So what Ruth was just summarizing is the beginning of the RFP process. So she was letting us know that energy efficiency in this case is our business partner. And when our business partner recognizes that there's a need for any services or products that need to be contracted, they will reach out to procurement. In doing so, the business partner or energy efficiency friends will write a statement of work, and that's going to be what's going to initiate the process. Let me go ahead.
So I don't know what happened there.
Okay, I can hear you now if you'd like to take back over. It
Okay.
sounds like you talked about the first part of the RFP process, enabling folks in Ariba, and how we partner with organizations like the GNE MSDC to search for qualified vendors. So I think that if we move to the RFP bidding process, we're probably in good shape to do that.
Okay.
Thank you, Ruth.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know what happened there. Okay. Next, okay, so the RFP bidding process begins. So which is often referred to as a bid process. There's a pre-bid meeting, which is usually virtual right now because of COVID. The purpose of that is that the bid goes out via Arba, then the pre-bid meeting happens. The pre-bid meeting is conducted to clear up any confusion regarding the project details, the scope of work, and the solicitation of documents. Vendors whose profiles match the bid needs will get alerted via email from Arba that they have been selected to participate in the bid. The template will explain what the bid is about, and it includes the timeline. The bid users use the bid call and that are asking questions, and also for clarifying information. So details of the pre-bid meeting consist of, the audience being the business partners, procurement, and the suppliers. And the suppliers are all anonymous unless they consent to sharing their names. Within that, they share information about the bid. They expand upon the scope of work presentation and answer questions the suppliers may have. And through that, we have a webinar. Questions are typed in. Questions are also documented. They're sent out to everyone within Arba. The information is equally available to all potential bidders and suppliers. Then through that, there is extensive information given around the intent to bid. The suppliers can bid at any time during the open bid process. The intent to bid is submitted in Arba. The systems do not have to formally say, yes, I will, I will bid. And within just thinking through what the timeline of this looks like, the bid is issued in Arba, and it's about a 3-week process. So if it's more of a complicated process and it's an extensive bid, it could be longer. Within the first week, the bid is published. And there, of course, is the vendor meeting and the matchmaking. And in week 2, the bidders provide questions to procurement from the vendor. And we also answer some of those questions within a week. The bidders will submit clarifying questions to procurement. Procurement passes along those to the business partner. Procurement is responsible for questions that are directed to them, and the business is responsible for theirs. Typically, there is a deadline to submit and answer questions. This information is usually outlined in the bid timeline. It takes about 1 week to receive questions, post answers throughout this process. And usually in week 2, we answer quite a bit of those questions. I would say, as someone who's participated in this, like we mentioned earlier, the timeline can shift depending on how extensive the work is. As business partners, we often, if we have additional questions, we'll go back to procurement, that will go back to the bidder, just making sure that, we fully, the questions that are asked are fully being answered. And now I'm going to move on to the next slide that just kind of goes through the RFP timeline. So this is an overview of the RFP timeline, and it has the bid process, which we wait for the bids to come in. The bids come in through Arba, no communication to the business partners. We don't receive that information. That goes straight to procurement. The business partners, such as us, manage those communications through Arba, and we then receive the proposals prior to scoring, because then scoring happens. We ask for clarifying questions after we have received those proposals, so that we make sure that what we're scoring on is based on what we're reading, and that there's clear interpretations around the information that's being submitted. You would be surprised sometimes what you learn by asking clarifying questions. So we try to do that to give those organizations that have submitted the proposal an opportunity to really respond and provide us with the information that we need to properly score. Assuming that there are no additional questions, the business partners provide technical scores, and the technical scores take about a week. The business partners are responsible for the technical scores. Procurement is responsible for the commercial scores. And I will definitely allow June to expand upon that when she is presenting a bit later. So through that, the technical and commercial scores are calculated to determine who has been who's the winner of the bid. And then it is submitted, and then the bids are evaluated. We look at, how is the proposal evaluated? The evaluation criteria has 3 categories, and that is the technical requirements that are scored by the business partners, which would be energy efficiency, the commercial requirement that is scored by procurement, which is June and her team, and the stewardship requirement, which the supplier, based on the answers, the SPQ when registered for REBA, that is scored and that is looked at through the supplier diversity and sustainability. So once evaluated based on the responses scope of work, a short list is recommended for final review. And so the short list, an example of that is like 40 bidders, vendors, and we need to get to 2 so that we score those bids, and we take like the top 6 and presentation, and we do presentations, and other bidders are then eliminated. So vendor presentations are optional. It's not something that we always do. We often end up doing them if we feel like we've read the proposals, a lot of great information. We want to compare them apple to apple. We want to see their team. We want to understand more of the work. So as business partners, we determine the need for those presentations. The presentations, they center on questions that we as business partners, and by business partners, again, I mean energy efficiency team, deem that are important, that are applicable to the scope of work, to discuss the technical competencies. The bidder themselves can to see if they can they can demonstrate if they have the understanding and the capacity to complete the scope of work. You'd be surprised how much you learn during a presentation from hearing questions from us as the business partner, hearing responses from the bidders themselves. For the bidder presentations, this information is sent out to the suppliers, and it's about an hour long. Through that, they show up, they do their presentations. I think one advice also I would give for the presentations, often the presentations are not supposed to be a bidder regurgitating their proposal, because we have the proposal, we've read and we see the information that it's there. It's more about giving a higher profile of the work, being able to answer the questions that we have asked, and really selling us as business partners on your ability to really do the work, and get an opportunity to know your team and the skill set that your team has. So that's a real opportunity to shine, and to just overall broker relationships with our team, with us as business partners. So finalists within that will be evaluated and scored by us. The procurement team notifies the supplier that won the bid, and then it's contingent upon the best and final scoring. Award notification to the bidder. The bidder is notified via REBA of the award, and formally award is announced once the contract is signed. Contracts with the winning supplier, there are general conditions and terms on either on the file or the acceptance through the RFP process. We notify the bidder who did not win. So if you do apply and you are not accepted, please know that we do follow up and let you know that. But we only do that once we've executed the contract with the bidder who has won. And then through that, the bid process is complete. And then we issue the purchase order. And this needs to be completed and approved before the contract is signed. A slew of approvals that need to take place through a REBA, Maximo, DR, contract approvals. So many members of our team, it's something that takes a while. I think it's important to say that, especially to organizations sometimes that are utilizing this to sustain their business. This is not just one contract that they're going after, it could be many. And sometimes for smaller businesses, this could be the primary one that you're looking into. It is something that takes quite a bit of time. Through that, though, once completed, the RFP process is completed, the business partners are notified, the contract is complete, payment terms are drafted, process is documented here, and generally it takes, once those items are agreed and the process is complete, procurement buyer is in communication with the individual that has been awarded. So once you've done all of that, you've gone through Ariba, you registered your business, we've identified some scope of work, we posted it, and we've reached out to you to apply. You've gone through the extensive process, you've answered questions, you've presented, and let's say you are selected. If you're selected, you've signed a contract, we've made announcements. The next step is the business kickoff. So the business kickoff with the business partner, which would be us, and the supplier, which would be the small business that applies. This is similar to like a program launch. After we've kind of awarded this to you, it's a great opportunity for us or individuals that, let's say, have been part of the process of looking at your presentations, for us to bring more of our colleagues into the fold to learn more about the work, to understand what you will be doing. It gives our colleagues an opportunity to ask a plethora of additional questions, to really look at the timeline. And so what is usually within that is that you're reiterating the following items during this kickoff. And that is, of course, confirming the scope of work, reviewing the roles and responsibilities. So identifying who on your team is going to be doing what. Also, project objectives, creating your, communicating what is the work, what's going to be the workflow, what are the phases of the work, what does the timeline of that look like. Also really important, expectations, outcomes, priorities, identifying who the implementation team is. Often this is listed in your proposal. It's also brought to your presentation. But what this is after you've come through quite a bit of that, you've had multiple meetings with us, and you have been awarded. Through that process, we probably shared quite a bit of feedback. And so this is an opportunity to incorporate all of those updates and share it with the larger team. So, it's also those who are in attendance, besides the business partners and supplier, we also talk through the supplier payment process. And once the purchase order is created, how this is mailed out, it's set up through Ariba, depending on the contract of how they're paid through Eversource, through us as Eversource. So that is a big, I would say a large overview of what the business kickoff includes. This now takes us to becoming business ready. So after we've kind of just discussed and described extensively, as you can see, as you've heard through the process of all the steps that exist in getting you to this point, is, a part of what we want to do in doing all of this is, getting a company business ready to do work with us. So we want, through this, we're going to be talking to, if you're interested in bidding on Eversource contracts, what do you do? One of the very first steps is applying in Ariba. That's really, really important. If you're not in there, unless it's work completely outside of our core competency that requires extensive research for new bidders, we're not going to know you do this type of work. I think it's also really important, setting that account in Ariba, so that there are multiple different opportunities that's become available, that you are able to apply. While this is energy efficiency, we have a lot of different work that's included in that, from marketing, from marketing to the work that is physically being done in our residential programs and our C&I programs. So definitely thinking about transferable skills, not limiting it to believing like, if I'm not an energy efficiency company, then I can't really apply for this. That's very much not true. Another way that you can become business ready is to make connections with our management and our business unit. Which we have a host of them that are here. So when we open this up and we open this up for questions, ask questions. If you're not sure, I'm a believer that there's no such thing as a stupid question. I don't care if somebody's asked the same question 3-4 times. Sometimes hearing it from a different person, hearing the response in a different way, it triggers it in a way that allows you to relate more to the response. And of course, check in with the department, our team members that are here, to see if there are any upcoming RFPs that are going to be released, and, just really networking with our industry. And even just speaking of the networking, I know that's something that Shantae and I are going to be continuing to explore, to identify opportunities to bring minority businesses more into the fold, connecting with our larger contractors, giving you an opportunity to network and learn more about the work that we do, but also connect with our larger contractors who are sometimes looking for subcontractors and minority business contractors. And so we want to work on improving matchmaking and building those relationships, because all of that supports businesses in becoming business ready. So those are the components I was going to review. Now I'm going to move this, pass this on to June, who will go through commonly asked questions.
Great. Thank you, Ruth. Nice job. So again, I'm June Wooding, and I head up the EE and Renewables Procurement Group for all 3 states for Eversource. And today I'm really going to focus on the 3 most commonly asked questions by vendors. And those are, how do we get on the bidder list every time? What does Eversource look for in a vendor? And what are the general terms and conditions? So question number 1, how do we get on the bidder list every time? Well, no vendor actually gets invited to every bid every time. I think that's probably surmised here, but it just depends on the expertise in the area of concern, of course. And for an unknown vendor, it will tie into primarily your vendor profile and who we search and how we search for you. So again, it's very important, as mentioned previous in other presentations here today, that you get enabled into Arba so we can find you, because if we don't know about you, you're not going to get an invite to the bid. So that's really putting the emphasis on Arba enablement. I mean, we build bids in the Arba system, and it's a closed loop where we interact with our vendors when we go out to grab those vendors who either we've searched for or we're already aware of that are in the system, and we grab them and we pull them into the bid. And then when we hit publish, those are the vendors in that closed loop that will be notified of the bid, and all our communications happen through Arba, not outside of the Arba system, and all our messages are enclosed. That way we have full documentation on any chronology, history, any conversations that are happening with these vendors. So depending on the timing of the bid and when we actually publish, if you have a profile and we've found you, then you may get a call from the business, or you may just be vetted through the bidding process itself, depending on when we have to pull the trigger on the on publish. So that really segues into the question, what does Eversource look for in a vendor once we have you and have pulled you into the bid? Well, first, sometimes I just want to clarify, it's not just Eversource that's bidding. It could be in energy efficiency in particular. I don't believe this happens outside of energy efficiency, but it could be a statewide bid because we're bidding with other utilities. We have same programs. We're looking for economies of scale. So we may be picking one or a group of vendors for all the utilities to use for those programs, particularly in Massachusetts, it'd be Mass Save, and the other states have their programs as well. So that's what we would be doing here. And many times Eversource will lead the bid, and so we bid on behalf of the other vendors, utilities, and there's interaction obviously throughout the whole process with those other utilities. So, but in general, we're looking for vendors who have adherence to safety. That's number one on our list. and really a balance of technical competency with commercial perspective. And so what I mean by commercial perspective is, and I think Ruth alluded to this, the technical competency really is done and evaluated in a scorecard by the business. And so that's done by them based on what they're reading in the proposals. And then the procurement group does the commercial aspect of it, which includes the pricing, sustainability, diversity, adherence to terms and conditions, or acceptance of in terms and conditions. Depending on the size of the bid, it would be creditworthiness as well. Insurance is a factor. You need to be able to carry enough insurance. Attention to detail in the bid process is important. If there's small things that you may be missing, especially with a lot of the energy efficiency work, it's very technical and analytical. So those are some of the things that they're looking at. Of course, understanding the scope, making sure that your proposal that we say, did they really know what we're asking here, or did they miss it somehow? Sometimes that can be corrected with the clarifying questions that Ruth has mentioned, but sometimes it's just that the vendor doesn't understand what we're asking for one reason or another. And to stay in the vendor pool, of course, it's following the terms and conditions that a particular vendor has signed, and to be consistent in their work, to be responsive to us when we need them, and keeping together all of the above that I had mentioned, the insurance and safety and all of that. So that's really what we're looking for when we're looking at the bids. And depending on the lens that we're looking through, whether it's procurement or the business, they're looking at two different things. So what are the general terms and conditions? The general terms and conditions are something that gets wrapped up into pretty much every contract. So no matter who you are with a vendor in energy efficiency, you're signing terms and conditions. We use different terms and conditions depending on the scope. So mostly we use consulting terms and conditions, or CNLM, which is conservation load management. And consulting is primarily, white paper work, analysis, where we would have to be more worried about errors and omissions, as opposed to CNLM, where they might be doing retrofitting, like with Alex program, their small business program, where the small business vendors are going in, making an assessment of the electrical use that a small business is using, how they can determine savings, what can they install that will help with that, and come up with savings and rebates. So that would be more on premise, so we would be using CNLM terms and conditions for that. So within the terms and conditions, no matter which one you use, they pretty much cover terms of payment, changes and additions in the contract, how to submit timely information, us, as Eversource, accepting satisfactory work. It covers safety, termination of contract if we need to, subcontractors and approvals for those subcontractors. We need to approve vendors' subcontractors and before they're actually used, especially if they're not part of the bid. So we also cover in our terms and conditions warranty of the work and the products that may be used. Advertising, vendors don't have the right to refer to us without our consent, in anything, even if it's a LinkedIn post looking for help because they think they're going to win this bid. If someone can tie it to us somehow, it shouldn't be done. And Eversource has the right to audit books as it relates to our agreement. And it also talks about insurance levels, which can vary by scope, of course, but you know, the bigger the contract, the bigger the insurance levels, or the bigger the risk in the contract. It could be a small IT contract, but maybe it has a big cyber risk. And so, you know, we would ask you to hold a large cyber insurance on that. It also talks about confidential information and how you're supposed to be treating that. LOL, we refer to it as LOL, which is not to be confused as laughed out loud, but it's limitations of liability. So, and then indemnity. And then also contractors are responsible for ensuring that their employees have background checks. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And so I'll open it up at this time to just general questions.
Thank you for that. So there's clearly been a lot of content. Great job today by Ruth and June. I'm sure there are lots of questions about process or about bids that are coming up. So we'll be able to unmute you all so you can ask any questions that you have. There are 3 questions in the Q&A form, so you're more than welcome to place them there as well. So Ruth, June, this first question will be for you, okay?
Okay.
All right. Hello. We hear of Eversource opportunities and in areas that we have strengths and expertise. We are registered in the portal. We are not always seeing the RFPs and bids come out. What is the Eversource process in place to include or add a vendor to the bid RFP process so we do not miss opportunities? Does Eversource have a fixed number of vendors for each RFP bid opportunity?
Okay, so how do you get seen if if we're not grabbing you? So I think sometimes it might be nailing the search. So with one of the slides, we had put next to the bids how they're categorized. So it was on the far right-hand corner. So I think that if you use that kind of language, then would be more apt to find you. Also, you know, please email through eeprocurement@eversource.com if you feel like you see a bid that's coming up and you want to be included. You know, that's certainly an option if we're not finding you. In terms of the number, the cap, it really depends on the bid and how many we're choosing. We have very, very different bids in energy efficiency. So we could have, you know, someone like, you know, a vendor pool like Alex's program, who, you know, across all states, we probably have more than 40 vendors that are involved in that program. And so when we bid it out, there's obviously a huge number of folks that we're inviting. I mean, we may have 60, 80 on the list, you know, but we're not going to have that for every bid. I mean, if we're doing a bid that you're choosing one vendor, then really we try to keep the vendor pool down to a much smaller level. You know, maybe half a dozen or so, but we are definitely looking for a balance in those numbers to make sure that we have diverse vendors in that mix. So, you know, that's one thing that I personally will go back if I don't see enough on there. Shantae knows, I'll say, you know, help us out. We can't find diverse vendors that work in this space. Can you give us some so, you know, we can balance out that bid? So that that definitely is what's transpiring on our end. Did I answer all the questions?
That was a complete answer. Thank you.
Okay, period, end of sentence on that one then.
So I just, you know, sometimes you do a webinar, you get flustered. I apologize. We're not opening anybody's mic, but please ask any questions you have in the Q&A chat, and I'll play traffic control and I'll shoot it over to the right respective person. We have a lot of the usual suspects asking questions, and while that is awesome, I do encourage anyone that's new to Eversource's procurement and bid offerings to ask us a question. So with that, I have an old favorite, Don. He's asked, does Eversource have a mechanism to connect or make information available between vendors? For example, I am a company that has some capability with a given RFP and would like the opportunity to work with a partner and primary contractor in a bid opportunity. And I think, June, again, you have a great recent example about this.
I do. So I think for the larger bids, what we're trying to do, if appropriate, if it can be segmented, if there's opportunities for subcontracting, what we've done recently is create, and I think it was Ruth that alluded to this, which is the matchmaking session. And so what we did was we understood that there were vendors that could do all of it, but there were also vendors that could do parts of it. And we created, when we had the upfront bid meeting, we said, okay, by this date, it was only a couple of days from when we had the bid meeting. You need to inform us that you want us to submit your name in Arba with your contact information, what your skill is, and give you the opportunity, or someone the opportunity, to partner with you. So there could be someone else that had a different area that wanted to partner with a particular vendor. And then it's really determining, who's the prime vendor, who's the subcontractor, because that can, that could vary as well. But that's something that, we could stay out of, we don't really care how that goes. So, but that's essentially what we did.
Thank you. Yes, and it seemed to work out, and I hope it's a model that we can continue to emulate when we have those larger contracts.
The intention.
Great. And then it looks like Deb has a question. I can actually answer this one. Can you please share how you're procuring staffing and recruitment services, and are there any upcoming opportunities? So we work exclusively with Randstad for any of our recruitment and staffing opportunities. Right now, we have a full bench. And when I say full, it's absolutely packed. We're currently going through it and reviewing whether or not we still have the right mix of suppliers on that bench. And so that is going to take a little bit of time. So the short answer is yes, we have Randstad, but at this point in time, we do not have any opportunity to add new suppliers to it. And I would encourage you to reach out to me probably in 6 months after we have scrubbed that list and are looking to make sure that it's meeting our current needs. I'll be sharing my contact information afterwards. Thank you very much for that question. Alrighty. Next question. Is your approach evaluating when a small business has the technical and qualifications, specifically employees that have 15 plus years working at electric utilities and 5 years as consultants, but the company itself has less than a year in the industry as a consultant? So what is your approach if there's basically a mix of experience, 15 as an employee at a utility, 5 as a consultant? How are the technical skills and qualifications evaluated? I guess that could be Krista or June.
So I'll take that one, which is fine.
Y'all follow up after June.
Okay, sure. So I think that when the business is looking at that, and it's primarily the business side that is looking at, the resumes, and, as I mentioned, from a procurement standpoint, we look at more of the pricing and the terms and conditions and that aspect of it. But, I'm not sure that as long as as the vendor is sort of nailing the scope and they can see that they're technically competent, and that we're happy with the work product. You know, it's taken into consideration, but I wouldn't think that you know, that it's a deal breaker if there's not enough overall experience, you know. And of course, it depends on who is the one that's interacting with us on a regular basis as well. You know, I mean, we wouldn't want to see a scenario where, you know, there's 50 years of experience, but the person that works with us day to day is, you know, been there 6 months or, you know, something like that.
Thank you
So I
much.
think it depends.
And Krista, did you have something to add as well?
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on what June said. I would agree with her. I believe experience is probably maybe a little more important than how long your business has been established, but still we would go through our normal vetting process. And I think we would, you know, it would carry some weight, you know, that amount of time working and like the example was working in utilities, I believe it says like 15 plus years. That's that's a significant amount of time. So we would definitely take that into consideration. As a procurement agent myself, I would advise the business as well to do the same. And it's not an end all be all, I would have to say.
Thank you so much. The next question I can take. Before I do, I know we have about 5 minutes. We have a couple questions. If we don't get to you, I'll do my best to follow up with you accordingly. There have not been any questions for Alex and Noel just yet. They do manage our small business programs in Mass and Connecticut. So just as a last call, if there are any questions about that, because we want to make sure that we utilize them. They're not always available for us because they are super duper busy. But I'll answer the next quick question. If a diverse business hasn't completed the certification process, will they still be considered a diverse business enterprise for contracting purposes? So the short answer at Eversource is yes, because we do allow you to self-certify. There are a few ways to self-certify. For example, you can use the Small Business Administration portal, or I can work with you to validate the business. The truth is we partner with great organizations like the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council so that you can work to get certified through them. They offer a plethora, I love saying that word, of services to help you become business ready and to make sure you maintain your certification. And so while the short answer is yes, I would certainly suggest partnering with the G&E to go ahead and get certified. Next question is, we are a prime minority contract. We are a prime, this will be the last one so that we can wrap up. We are a prime minority construction management and general contractor and looking for opportunities with Eversource. How do we get on board? And again, I will pivot this to Krista and or June.
Yep. I handle construction management for facilities. So if that's the space that you're talking about, I'll put my email address in the chat, and then maybe you can, you know, we could do a follow-up afterwards. I know we're tight on time, but like it was mentioned earlier, just register in Arba. So we know we have you guys as a possible option.
Can I add something, Shantae, real quick?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for the last two questions, they're about, like, you know, getting started. I think Shantae mentioned this. We're going to send the link to Arba at the end of this so that you'll have that. Also, just around the type of contractors we're looking for. While this particular presentation was on energy efficiency, our entire it's also connected to our entire corporation. We have a lot of opportunities that are available. So don't think about, don't try to limit your work just to the scope of energy efficiency or specific products. Definitely just focus more on getting into Arba, creating a strong profile, listing all of the different types of services that you offer and the ones that are also transferable with other areas of our work. I would also encourage you to look at our website as the company's website, to look at all the different types of work that we do, what our goals are, and to see if there's an opportunity for you to kind of connect there. So I just wanted to share that so we don't think that your scope is limited if you're not within energy efficiency or in energy in general.
That's a great point, Ruth. And just from Eversource's standpoint, I would like to say thank you for all attending. To Ruth's point earlier, we will be sending you a link to a survey, so please complete it. And then you will be getting some information from us, how to register, the deck for this, as well as how to register for the Ariba portal. You'll have my contact information. I'm your connection to these folks on the panel. If you have any other questions, definitely reach out to me so that I can facilitate those answers for you. And we're really committed to providing you with education and training or whatever you may need to do business with Eversource. So please be candid in completing out the survey. We can only get better with the feedback that you provide us. And with that, I will turn it back over to the great Peter Hurst.
Oh, wow. So before we go, I want to thank Craig, Shante, Ruth, June, Krista, Noel, and Alexandra for this incredible amount of information you shared today, and for letting all of our MDs know about these opportunities. I want to thank Eversource for all you do to support minority business development and to support the Greater New England Council. And I want to thank all of the attendees. I hope you found this valuable. I know I did. I learned a lot. And just before we sign off, if you need to get certified, it's not a painful process. Contact us and we can get it done sooner rather than later. But the most important thing, make sure you hit with Eversource as often as you can. There's a lot of opportunities there, and we want to thank all of you again for sharing information about the opportunities you have at Eversource. Good afternoon.